Adrian Carter slammed his phone face down on the white tablecloth so hard the wine glasses shook, and every head in the restaurant turned. "I'm done," he said, jaw-tight voice barely above a whisper. "Set me up one more time, Lucas, and I swear to God I will fire you as my best friend." Lucas just smiled. Slowly. The way a man smiles when he already knows something you don't. And then the door opened, and everything Adrian Carter thought he knew about his own life walked straight out of it. The dinner rush at Rosario's was the kind of controlled chaos that Adrian Carter usually avoided on principle. Too many people, too many eyes, too many whispers behind carefully raised menus. Is that him, Carter? The hotel guy he'd chosen the corner booth specifically because it had a wall on two sides and a clear sightline to both exits. Old habit. His security lead Marcus had already swept the room twice and was now parked at the bar nursing a club soda and pretending to read his phone. Adrian had arrived 11 minutes early. Because Adrian Carter was always early, always prepared, always in control. Except apparently when it came to whatever circus his best friend Lucas Hale had just signed him up for. He checked his watch, 7:04 p.m. Then he picked up his phone, opened his messages, and typed, "This is the last time, I mean it." Lucas replied in under 10 seconds. "You said that last time." "I meant it last time too. Her name is Hannah. She's lovely. Just be a human being for 2 hours. You remember how to do that, right?" Adrian set the phone down, leaned back against the leather booth, and stared at the ceiling. Be a human being. As if it were that simple. As if you could just flip a switch after 4 years of running a billion-dollar company, raising a 6-year-old daughter alone, and building walls so thick around yourself that even your own reflection sometimes felt like a stranger. He'd done the dates. God, he'd done the dates. There had been Vanessa, the fashion editor, who spent 40 minutes talking about a yacht she'd been invited onto in Monaco, and kept glancing at his watch like she was appraising it. There had been Christine, lovely, genuinely lovely, but who had Googled him at the table. Sat across from him and typed his name into her phone, and then looked up with that particular expression. The one that meant she was no longer looking at him. She was looking at the number. And then there was the one Lucas refused to discuss anymore, the event planner, who had excused herself to use the restroom and come back with a business proposal printed on a cocktail napkin. Adrian had left a $100 tip and never called. The waiter appeared. Young kid, maybe 23, earnest eyes. "Can I start you with something while you wait, sir?" "Water, and whatever your darkest red is." "Excellent choice. Are you—" The kid stopped. Blinked. That recognition flicker. "Celebrating something this evening?" "No," Adrian said flatly. "I'm being punished." The kid laughed nervously and disappeared. Adrian pulled out his phone again and scrolled through 14 unread emails, 3 flagged contracts, and 1 voice message from his daughter Emma's school that he had not yet allowed himself to listen to. Not because he was avoiding it, he told himself, but because he needed to be somewhere quieter. Somewhere he could think without the background noise of his phone buzzed. Lucas. "She just texted me. Running 5 minutes late. Don't you dare leave." Adrian set the phone down again and exhaled through his nose. 5 minutes. He could give 5 minutes. He looked around the room. Couples leaning toward each other over candlelight. A table of 4 men his age laughing loud about something loosened ties, the second bottle already open. A woman near the window eating alone, reading a paperback completely unbothered by the world. He envied her more than he could say. His wine arrived. He took 1 sip, then another, and let the silence settle around him like armor. Then his phone buzzed again. Not Lucas this time. His daughter's school, a follow-up text, this time not the voicemail. "Mr. Carter, just a reminder that Emma's spring performance is Thursday at 6 p.m. She has been asking every day if you'll be there. Please let us know if you can confirm." His chest tightened. Thursday. He had the Singapore investment group flying in Thursday at 4. The dinner was booked at 7. Marcus had already arranged the cars. He typed back quickly, I'll be there." Then he forwarded it to his assistant with one line. "Move Singapore to Wednesday or Friday. Non-negotiable." He set the phone down and rubbed his jaw. Emma, 6 years old, and already the most emotionally intelligent person he'd ever met. She had her mother's eyes, that particular shade of gray-green that caught light differently depending on her mood, and a way of seeing straight through him that still 4 years later stopped him cold sometimes when he wasn't expecting it. Last week she'd climbed into his lap while he was on a conference call and placed both small palms on either side of his face, the way she always did when she wanted his full attention, and said, "Daddy, are you lonely?" He had laughed, deflected, told her he was just tired. She'd looked at him for a long moment, that gray-green gaze steady and ancient, and then said simply, "It's okay to be lonely, Daddy. It just means you still have room for somebody." He had not known what to say to that. He still didn't. The restaurant door opened. He didn't look up. He had stopped looking up every time the door opened 20 minutes ago. But then he heard it. A small voice. High and clear, the way a child's voice cuts through adult noise without effort. "Mom, Mom, they have candles on all the tables. I see that bug. Are we allowed to touch them?" "We are not." "What if I just—" "Noah, I wasn't going to touch it. I was just going to look at it close." "Those are the same thing, and you know it." Adrian looked up. A woman was standing at the host stand, one hand extended toward the boy beside her, in the practiced way of mothers everywhere, not gripping, just present, just available. The boy was maybe 5 or 6, dark-haired, wearing a sweater that looked like someone had ironed it carefully, and then he had immediately done something to it on the way over. The woman was. Adrian stopped. She wasn't what he expected. She wasn't what he had prepared himself for. She was wearing a dark coat, simple, not new, and her hair was pulled back the way women pull their hair back when they're managing 12 things at once, and appearance is not currently at the top of the list. She was talking quietly to the host, and even from across the room, he could see the slight tension around her shoulders. The particular posture of someone who is trying to appear completely comfortable and is not entirely succeeding. The host leaned down to the boy and said something, and the boy's entire face transformed pure, unguarded delight, and he tugged the woman's sleeve with both hands. She laughed. Not the careful, considered laugh that Adrian had sat across from 100 times at 100 dinners. Not the laugh that meant "I am being charming right now." Just a laugh. Real and quick and slightly surprised, the way laughter sounds when it ambushes you. Adrian realized he had been staring. He looked back down at his wine. She brought a kid. He felt the thought turn over in his mind. Not with irritation, which surprised him, but with something closer to curiosity. And underneath the curiosity, if he was honest, something that felt dangerously like relief. Because this was real. Whatever this was going to be, awkward, disastrous, over in 90 minutes, it was real. That woman had not had time to research him. Had not had time to think through the angle. She was here with a child on a Tuesday night because life had apparently not given her another option, and she had showed up anyway. He respected that even before he knew her name. The host was guiding them toward his table. Adrian straightened, set down his wine, made the unconscious adjustments of a man who had spent his adult life walking into rooms and needing to project something specific. Then he stopped himself. Just be a human being. The woman reached the table. Up close, she was younger than the posture suggested. Early 30s, he guessed, with dark eyes that registered him with a quick professional assessment that was completely absent of the usual performance. She wasn't calculating. She was just looking. "Adrian," she said. Her voice was steady, but not quite relaxed. The voice of someone who had rehearsed the first word and was now improvising everything after it. "Hannah," he said, and stood. She put out her hand, and they shook a real handshake, brief and firm, and then she looked down at the boy who was looking up at Adrian with the direct, unself-conscious attention of a child who has not yet learned that staring is rude. "This is Noah," she said. I'm so sorry, my sitter canceled literally as I was walking out the door, and I didn't have time to... It's fine, Adrian said. And then, because he could see she didn't quite believe him, he crouched down to Noah's level and said, Hi Noah, I'm Adrian. Do you want the seat by the candle? Noah considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Then he nodded once like a formal agreement had been reached. Adrian pulled out the chair. Hannah watched him do it. Something in her expression shifted. Not softened exactly, but recalibrated, the way you recalibrate when the thing in front of you turns out to be something other than what you expected it to be. They sat. For a moment, nobody said anything. Noah was examining the candle from approximately 4 inches away, and Hannah was clearly suppressing the urge to tell him to lean back, and Adrian was watching both of them and feeling something he couldn't immediately name. So, Hannah said finally, and she almost smiled. Lucas tells me you work in travel. Adrian reached for his wine. Travel writing, yes. Hotels mostly. You. School librarian. She said it the way people say things they're proud of, but have learned to be slightly defensive about. 4th and 5th grade. Maplewood Elementary out on Carver. Do you like it? She blinked. Like that wasn't the expected follow-up question. Yeah, she said. I do. I really do, actually. What do you like about it? She looked at him for a moment, and he could see her deciding whether this was a real question or a social placeholder. The moment, she said. When a kid who doesn't think they like reading finds the right book, that specific moment, it's like watching something unlock in them. She paused. Sorry, I know that's a librarian thing to say. No, I get it, Adrian said. That's what it feels like sometimes in a really good hotel. When someone walks in exhausted and worried, and then 3 hours later, you see them at breakfast, and something in them has just released. She looked at him differently for just a second. Huh, she said. I wouldn't have thought of it that way. Most people don't. Noah, who had apparently exhausted his interest in the candle, was now watching Adrian with the focused curiosity of a research scientist. Are you my mom's boyfriend? He asked. Noah. I'm just asking. We literally just met Bug. So no. Hannah confirmed, her voice carrying the particular patience of someone who has had variations of this exact conversation at least 40 times. But you might be, Noah said to Adrian, with the reasonable neutrality of a weather forecast. Noah, read your book. I finished it in the car. Then look at the menu. I already know what I want. Then, Hannah stopped, pressed her lips together for 1 second, then looked at Adrian with an expression that was equal parts apology and helpless amusement. He's 5. He has no filter. I have a filter, Noah corrected, still looking at Adrian. I just don't use it that much. Adrian laughed, a real one, the kind that surprised him. Hannah's expression shifted again, and this time it did soften, just slightly, just enough. They were on the 2nd hour before either of them noticed. The restaurant had thinned around them. The table of loud men in loosened ties had paid their check and gone. The woman reading by the window had been replaced by an elderly couple who now sat in comfortable silence over their desserts. Noah had fallen asleep against Hannah's shoulder 40 minutes ago, his small hand curled around his old stuffed bear, a tattered thing named, apparently, Captain. And Hannah had maneuvered him sideways without breaking her sentence, the practiced ease of someone who had been doing this alone for a very long time. Adrian had noticed. He noticed everything. He noticed the way she always positioned herself between Noah and the aisle, the way she spoke to the waiter, not dismissively, not overly warm, just human like he was a person and not a function. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking something through and hadn't decided yet whether to say it. He noticed that she had not once asked him what hotels he'd written about, had not Googled him, had not angled the conversation toward what he had or where he'd been or who he knew. She had asked him what book he'd read most recently, and then argued with him pleasantly firmly about the ending. She had told him about her own mother briefly, in a way that made it clear the relationship was complicated, and she had made a kind of peace with that. She had laughed again at something he'd said about airport hotels, a specific involuntary laugh, and then caught herself and pressed her hand briefly to her mouth like she was surprised by the volume. "My ex used to say I laughed too loud," she said. "Your ex was wrong," Adrian said. She looked at him. Held it for a beat longer than was strictly necessary. "Yeah," she said finally. "He was wrong about a lot of things." The waiter appeared with the check. Hannah reached for it automatically. Adrian placed his hand on the folder before she could. "Please," he said. Not loudly. Not with the particular weight of a man demonstrating his wealth. Just the quiet request of someone who meant it. She studied him for a moment. Then she moved her hand back. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for coming. And for—" He glanced at the sleeping Noah at the small bear tucked under his arm. "For not making this smaller than it was." She was quiet for a second. "I almost didn't come," she said. "I almost texted Lucas and said I was sorry, but it wasn't a good night." "What changed your mind?" She looked down at Noah. Something moved across her face, something complicated and private and completely unguarded. "He asked me to," she said. "He said," a small, helpless smile. "He said, 'Mom, just go. Maybe he'll be nice.'" Adrian was quiet. "Was he right?" Hannah asked, looking at him now. No armor, no calculation, just the straight, honest question of someone who had been disappointed enough times to have learned to ask directly. Adrian held her gaze. "I hope so," he said. "I'm working on it." She held his gaze for a beat longer. Then she nodded just slightly, like something had been confirmed. Outside on the sidewalk, Hannah shifted a still sleeping Noah from the chair to her shoulder, and he relocated automatically, practiced and boneless, still gripping Captain. Adrian stood beside her while she settled the weight of her son. The night was cool. The streetlights made everything look slightly softer than it was. "I don't usually—" She stopped. Started again. "Lucas has tried to set me up before. I've said no, mostly because it doesn't feel worth it," Adrian said. She looked at him. "Yeah," she said, quietly. "Yeah, exactly." A beat of silence. "He has the right book," Adrian said. She frowned slightly. "Sorry. Lucas, he has the instinct. He doesn't always have the timing, and he definitely doesn't know when to stop, but—" Adrian glanced at Noah again, at the small sleeping face against her shoulder. "He found you the right book." Hannah looked at him for a long moment. Something in her expression was very still. "That's a librarian thing to say," she said, very softly. "I know," Adrian said. "I heard a good one earlier." She laughed again, surprised quiet, trying not to wake Noah. She shifted her son's weight one more time, and then she said, "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Hannah." She walked to her car. He watched her go. Noah's small hand still wrapped around the old bear, dangling over her shoulder, slightly bobbing with each step. Adrian stood on the sidewalk until the taillights disappeared. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. One text from Marcus. "Car's ready whenever." One text from Lucas. "Well?" Adrian typed back 2 words. "Don't gloat." Lucas's reply came in under 4 seconds. "I'm gloating." Adrian pocketed the phone. He stood there for another moment in the cool night air, hands in his coat pockets looking at the empty street where her car had been. And for the first time in a very long time, Adrian Carter didn't reach for the next thing. He just stood there and breathed. He had no way of knowing, standing there on that sidewalk, that the woman who had just driven away with her son asleep on her shoulder was already carrying a secret he hadn't thought to ask about. and that he was carrying one too. One that would, in exactly 3 weeks, destroy everything. 3 days passed before Adrian went back to the library. He told himself it was because he was in the neighborhood. He had a property walk through 2 blocks over a boutique hotel acquisition that his real estate team had been pushing for 6 months, and afterward, he had 40 minutes to kill before his car arrived. That was what he told himself. Marcus, who had been his security lead for 9 years, and therefore knew him better than most people Adrian had chosen to let into his life, said nothing when Adrian told the driver to wait. He simply fell into position a half step behind, and to the left, the way he always did. And when they reached the front steps of Maplewood Public Library, and Adrian paused at the door, Marcus looked straight ahead and kept his expression professionally blank. "You can wait out here," Adrian said. "Happy to, sir." "I won't be long." "Take your time, sir." Adrian pushed through the door. The library was smaller than he expected. Not cramped, just the particular kind of small that feels intentional, like someone had thought carefully about every inch of space and decided it should be used for something that mattered. The shelves were full, but not chaotic. There were 2 round tables near the back where kids sat doing homework, backpacks piled on the floor around them like sandbags. A bulletin board near the entrance was covered in hand-drawn book covers. 4th and 5th grade interpretations of their favorite stories, crayon and marker, and one ambitious watercolor that had blurred at the edges. He stood there for a moment looking at the watercolor. "You look lost." He turned. Hannah was standing behind the circulation desk, a stack of returned books balanced against her hip, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not unwelcoming, not yet warm. Somewhere in the precise middle, like a door that was open an inch and waiting to see what kind of knock this was going to be. "I was in the neighborhood," Adrian said. She set the books down. "The property walkthrough on Delancey." He stared at her. "Lucas," she said simply. "He texts me updates like a sports commentator. I've asked him to stop. He ignores me." "I'll talk to him." "Don't bother. He'll just switch to voice memos." She picked up one of the returned books, checked the spine, set it on a sorting cart. "Did you need something, or were you just confirming I was real?" He almost smiled. "Little of both." She looked up at him then. That same direct, unperformed assessment from the restaurant. The look of someone who had learned somewhere along the way to see clearly and quickly, because the cost of being wrong had been too high too many times. "The kids are finishing up homework in about 20 minutes, she said. "After that it gets quiet. You can look around if you want." It wasn't an invitation exactly, but it wasn't a dismissal either. "I'll find something to read," he said. She handed him a book without looking up from her sorting. "Try that one." He looked at the cover. "The Remains of the Day, Kazuo Ishiguro." "You're recommending I read a novel about a butler who represses his emotions so completely that he loses the woman he loves," Adrian said. Hannah paused, looked at him. "You've read it." "Twice." Something moved across her face, quickly like weather. "Then you don't need me to explain why I handed it to you." He held her gaze for a beat. Then he took the book to a chair near the window and sat down. He stayed for 2 hours. They didn't talk much. She worked. He read or held the book open and thought, which is a different thing. The kids cleared out. A few adults came and went. Noah, it turned out, had an after-school program on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and a grandmother who picked him up and kept him until Hannah's shift ended at 6. At 5:45, Hannah came over with 2 cups of coffee from the small machine in the back office. She set one down beside him without asking if he wanted it. "Black," he said. "You looked like black." She sat in the chair across from him. "How's the book?" "Devastating." "Good books usually are." She wrapped both hands around her cup. "So, travel writing. Where have you been lately?" And this was the moment, right there. The question was simple, the answer was ready. Tokyo, actually reviewing a new property in Shinjuku, and it would have been so easy. So practiced, so completely false. "I've been working mostly from home the last few months," he said instead. Which was true in the way that certain partial truths are technically accurate and functionally misleading. A lot of research, less travel than usual. You miss it, the travel. Sometimes, less than I expected to, honestly. He paused. "I have a daughter, 6 years old. The more I'm home, the harder it gets to leave." Something in Hannah's posture shifted. Not dramatically, she didn't lean forward or change expression, but she stilled in the way that people still when something just said out loud matches something they understand internally. "How long have you been doing it alone?" she asked. 4 years. He turned the coffee cup in his hands. "Her mother passed away when Emma was 2. Cardiac event. No warning, nothing chronic beforehand. Just one morning she was there, and by the afternoon she wasn't." Hannah was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," she said. And it was the right kind of sorry, not the kind that wants to fix or fill the silence, just the kind that acknowledges the weight of a thing and sits with it for a second. "Noah's father?" he asked. "He left when Noah was 8 months old," she said. Flat, but not bitter. The flatness of someone who has processed this so many times, it has become simply a fact, like weather or geography. Decided fatherhood wasn't what he'd signed up for. Moved to Portland, started a brewery. A small pause. Sends a card at Christmas, sometimes. "Does Noah ask about him?" "He used to, less now." She looked at her coffee. "He's at the age where he started to figure out that some questions don't have good answers, and asking them just makes his mom go quiet. So he's stopped asking." She said it simply, but Adrian heard the thing underneath it, the particular grief of watching your child make themselves smaller to protect you. "That's a heavy thing to carry for a 5-year-old, he said. "Yeah," she looked up. "He's a pretty strong 5-year-old, though." "I noticed." She smiled then, small private, the real kind. "He talked about you, by the way, after, told his grandmother that he met a man at dinner who laughed at his jokes. His joke about the candle was genuinely funny. Don't tell him that. His ego is already operating at full capacity." Adrian laughed, and she laughed too, and for a moment the library was just 2 people in chairs with coffee, the last of the afternoon light coming through the windows, the world outside doing whatever the world does when you're not paying attention. Then her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it. "My mom's dropping Noah off early. He has a thing." A thing. He decided he needs to show someone his rock collection before bed. He was very clear that it was urgent. She stood, picked up her cup. "He gets like this about rocks sometimes. I've learned to just go with it." She started back toward the desk, then stopped. "Same time Thursday," she said, facing slightly away from him like it was a casual thing, like she hadn't considered it. Adrian looked at her. "Yeah," he said. "Same time Thursday." She nodded once and went back to work. On the sidewalk outside, Marcus fell into step beside him without a word. They walked half a block before Marcus said carefully, "Good visit, sir." "Don't," Adrian said. "Of course not, sir." But Marcus was smiling just barely at the middle distance, and Adrian decided to let it go. He went back Thursday, and the Thursday after that, and the Tuesday in between. And each time it was the same. He arrived. She handed him something to read. They talked during the quiet stretches, and the hours passed in a way that hours hadn't passed for Adrian Carter in a very long time. Without agenda, without performance, without the low-grade hum of strategy that underscored almost every other interaction in his life. She never looked him up. He knew because she never looked at him the way people look at you when they've done the research. She asked about his work with the particular curiosity of someone who finds the subject genuinely interesting, not someone who is waiting to drop a reference that proves they did their homework. She asked what kind of hotels he wrote about. She asked whether he thought luxury hospitality was becoming too homogeneous, which was coincidentally a question his board had been wrestling with for 18 months and which she had arrived at entirely independently from reading an article in a magazine in the library break room. He told her he thought it was. They argued about it for 40 minutes, and he left feeling more intellectually alive than he had after 3 recent board meetings combined. He brought coffee the 4th time, the good kind from the place 2 streets over in paper cups with a cardboard sleeve. He set one on the desk in front of her without preamble. She looked at it, then at him. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know." She picked it up, took a sip. Her expression did the thing it always did when something was better than expected, a small involuntary flicker there and gone, like she didn't want to give the thing too much credit until she'd decided it had earned it. "That's good coffee," she said. "It's a good place." "I've never been." "It's on Fenwick, the one with the green door." She looked at him with the expression she used when she was filing something away. "I'll remember that." He started to turn toward his usual chair, and she said, "Noah wants to know if you like baseball." He stopped. "Why?" "He has a theory." She kept her eyes on her computer screen, professionally neutral. "He's been developing it for about 2 weeks. I've been asked not to share the details, but he wanted me to collect data." Adrian processed this for a moment. "Tell him yes. Yankees 3rd generation." She typed something into her phone thumb, moving quickly. A few seconds later, her phone buzzed back. She looked at it and laughed, the surprised, slightly too loud one that she still sometimes tried to contain. "What did he say?" Adrian asked. She turned the phone around. Noah had sent back a single emoji, a check mark. "And then tell him I'm a Yankees fan too. We can be friends now, officially." Adrian looked at the message for a moment. He felt something pull in his chest that he didn't have an immediate name for. It was the week after that when Emma entered the equation. Adrian had picked Emma up early from school for a dentist appointment, and afterward she had lobbied with the focused persistence of a skilled negotiator for a stop at the library. Not his usual branch, she wanted the one with the fishbowl window, "Daddy," the one you told me about where the librarian tells you what to read. He hadn't, strictly speaking, told her about it in those exact terms. But Emma had inherited his ability to extract information from context, and she had clearly been paying attention. He'd said no twice. She'd said please once with the eyes, and he'd redirected the car. He had thought he would simply drop Emma at the children's section and find a way to manage the situation. He had not thought through adequately what would happen when Emma walked directly up to the circulation desk and said in her clearest and most confident voice, "Excuse me, are you the librarian who tells people what to read?" Hannah had looked up from her computer. She looked at the little girl. Then she looked at Adrian, standing 4 feet behind, with an expression he could not quite control. Then she looked back at Emma. "I am," she said. "What kind of books do you like?" "Ones with animals that talk," Emma said. "But not the ones where the animals are secretly humans. I can tell, and it bothers me." Hannah put her elbows on the desk and leaned forward. "Okay, follow me." She didn't look at Adrian. She simply walked around the desk and held out her hand, and Emma, without hesitation, without the usual 3-second assessment she performed before deciding to trust any adult, took it. Adrian stood at the desk and watched his daughter walk into the stacks with a woman who 3 weeks ago had been a stranger, and felt something in his chest rearrange itself around a new weight. He didn't have a word for it yet. He was starting to be afraid that he soon would. They were gone for almost 20 minutes. When they came back, Emma was holding 4 books and talking at a pace that Adrian recognized as the speed she hit when she was genuinely excited about something, and her brain was moving faster than her words. "And she said that one is sad at the end, but the good kind of sad, not the bad kind. And I said, how do you know the difference? And she said, because the good kind makes you feel less alone, and the bad kind just makes you feel bad." Hannah caught Adrian's eye over Emma's head. Something passed between them in that look. Something that neither of them had language for yet, or maybe had language for, but weren't ready to say out loud. He mouthed, "Thank you." "Thank." She shook her head slightly. "Don't." Can we come back? Emma asked her. Not him. Her. Hannah crouched down to Emma's level. You can come back anytime you want, she said. I'll keep looking for more. Emma considered this with great seriousness. Then she said, My daddy comes here a lot. I know, Hannah said. He doesn't usually do things a lot. Emma said. He does them once, and then he's done. Except with me and work. Hannah glanced up at Adrian again. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. Well, Hannah said to Emma, with the careful gentleness of someone choosing their words very precisely, some things are worth doing more than once. Emma nodded like this was settled. Then she took her 4 books and went to find a table because she had decided she was going to start the first one right now in this room with this carpet, and that was final. Adrian stepped to the desk. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't plan. She's wonderful, Hannah said, simply completely. He stopped. She looks like you. Hannah continued, turning back to her computer. But she talks like someone who's been raising herself, in the best way. She's been raising me more like. Yeah. Hannah smiled at her screen. I got that. He picked up a book from the display rack without looking at what it was, turned it over, put it back. Can I ask you something? He said. You can ask, she said. I might not answer. Fair. He leaned his arm on the desk. Quietly. When did it stop being the hardest thing? Being alone with a kid. When did it start feeling like enough? She stopped typing, sat back in her chair, looked at him with an expression that was very still. It doesn't stop being the hardest thing, she said. It just starts being the thing you're best at. A pause. And the being enough part, I don't know that it's about stopping. I think it's about deciding. One morning, you just decide that this life you built with the pieces you had, it matters. And you stop waiting for someone to come along and validate it. He listened to every word. She held his gaze steadily without heat, without the particular tension of 2 people building towards something. Just one person who had learned something hard telling another person who needed to hear it. Did you decide? He asked. I'm deciding, she said. Every day. Some days it's easier than others. Emma appeared at Adrian's elbow with her first book already open to page 11. Daddy, she was right. This one is good. Adrian looked down at his daughter, then back at Hannah. Yeah, he said. She usually is. That night after Emma was in bed, book on her pillow, one light left on the particular satisfied arrangement of a child who had found something new to love. Adrian sat in his home office and looked at the city through the glass for a long time. He thought about what Hannah had said, the deciding thing, every day. He thought about the lie he was still telling her. Not loudly, not aggressively. He hadn't handed her false documents or invented an elaborate backstory. He had simply allowed the omission to stay in place day after day, because every time he thought about correcting it, some part of him calculated the cost and flinched. Because the moment she knew, the moment she Googled Adrian Carter travel writer and found instead, Adrian Carter Forbes list. Carter hospitality net worth estimated at everything would shift. Every conversation they'd had would be reread through that lens. Every coffee cup, every chair by the window, every hand-delivered pastry would be reinterpreted by a woman who had been burned by dishonesty before and had excellent, well-earned reasons to trust her instincts about it. He told himself he'd tell her soon. He told himself he was waiting for the right moment. But the truth he didn't say out loud even to himself. Alone at 11 p.m., with the city spread out beneath him, was that he didn't want to lose the thing they had. This specific, small, unhurried thing, where he was just a man in a chair with a book, and she was just a woman who knew which book he should read, and they talked about their kids, and argued about hotels and shared coffee without subtext. He didn't want to lose that. He didn't think about what he would lose if he kept the secret. He picked up his phone, looked at Hannah's number, put the phone back down. Across the apartment, Emma's light was still on. He walked to her doorway. She was asleep, the new book still open against her chest, face slack and peaceful, one arm around the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. He stood there for a moment in the dark hallway watching his daughter sleep. Some things are worth doing more than once. He went to bed. He did not sleep for a long time. And down across the city, in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building on Carver Street, Hannah Brooks was sitting at her kitchen table after Noah's bedtime grading reading logs and drinking the last of the coffee from the pot. And she was not thinking about Adrian Carter. She was not thinking about him so determinedly, with such focused effort, that she had been at it for 45 minutes. Her phone was face up on the table. She had not looked at it. She looked at it. No message. She turned it back over. She picked up her pen. Put it down. Looked at the ceiling for a moment in the particular way of someone who is conducting a very firm internal conversation and losing. Then she picked the pen back up and went back to work. Because she had learned the long, hard way that hoping was something you had to ration, that you couldn't spend it all at once on someone you'd known for 3 weeks, someone whose full story you didn't know yet, someone who felt, and this was the part she kept circling back to, this was the thing she kept pushing away, because it scared her, someone who felt more like a real thing than anything had felt in a very long time. She had been wrong before. She had been very, very wrong before. She graded 3 more reading logs. Then her phone lit up on the table. A text. From a number that wasn't saved yet, though she'd looked at it enough times in the last 2 weeks that she could have recited it from memory if asked. Emma wants me to tell you she's on chapter 4 and, quote, the good kind of sad is exactly right. Hannah looked at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, tell her the 2nd book is even better. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. She says she already knows. Hannah put her phone down. And then in the quiet of her kitchen at 11:30 on a Wednesday night, she smiled private and unguarded and completely alone with the particular helplessness of someone who has just lost an argument they had been winning for weeks. It happened on a Saturday, not a Tuesday or a Thursday, which had become their days without either of them formally declaring them as such. A Saturday, which was outside the established pattern, which meant Adrian had no clean reason to explain why he was standing in the library parking lot at 11 in the morning with a box of pastries from the Green Door place on Fenwick and a copy of a book he'd already read twice. He had a reason. He'd had one ready since the night before. He was passing through. He had a meeting nearby. Lucas had mentioned something about. He didn't end up needing it, because when Hannah opened the library side door at 11:07 a.m. to drag out a recycling bin, she saw him stopped, looked at him, looked at the pastry box and said, there's a story time in 20 minutes. I know. It's for 4-year-olds. I'm emotionally 4. She stared at him. Then she propped the door open with her hip and said, get in here before Mrs. Kowalski from the neighborhood association sees you lurking. He got in. Noah was already there. It was his Saturday with Hannah, no school. No grandma sitting at the round table in the children's section with a pile of rocks arranged in a very specific order that he was clearly prepared to defend if challenged. He looked up when Adrian walked in. You came on a Saturday, Noah said. Flat, like a fact being logged. Apparently. Mom said you might. Adrian glanced at Hannah, who had her back to them, and was setting up chairs with the particular focus of someone who has decided not to be part of this conversation. Did she? He said. She said don't get too excited. Noah looked at his rocks. But I was already excited so. Adrian pulled out a chair across from him. Tell me about the rocks. Noah looked up sharply, as if checking for sarcasm. Finding none, he immediately launched into an explanation that lasted 11 minutes, during which Adrian learned more about quartz formation glacial deposits and the specific gravel composition of the Maplewood Elementary playground than he had encountered in his previous 36 years of life. He did not interrupt once. When Noah finished, he sat back and looked at Adrian with the particular satisfaction of someone who has been listened to completely. You actually listened, Noah said. Of course. Most adults nod, but they're not actually listening. I can tell. How? Their eyes go soft. Noah picked up a small gray stone. Your eyes didn't go soft. I'll take that as a compliment. It was one. Noah set the stone down carefully. You can hold that one if you want. That's the feldspar. It's my best one. Adrian picked up the small gray stone. It was smooth flat, unremarkable to any eye, except the one that had decided it mattered. Thank you, he said, and meant it. From across the room, Hannah watched them for just a moment. Then she went back to setting up chairs. Story time came and went. 12 4-year-olds, one very tired young parent volunteer, and a picture book about a bear who couldn't find his mittens that ended against all reasonable expectation, with a moral about asking for help. Adrian sat in the back and listened, and thought that someone somewhere was being very deliberate about which books ended up on library shelves, and he suspected he was looking at her. Afterward, when the families had cleared out and Noah was restacking his rocks with the focused intensity of a surgeon, Hannah came and sat beside Adrian in the back row. So, she said. So, he said. Saturday. It's a day of the week, yes. She turned her head and looked at him with an expression that was somewhere between amused and something else she wasn't quite naming. Adrian. Hannah. She held his gaze steadily. I need you to tell me something honest. He felt something tighten in his chest. Carefully, precisely, he said, Okay. What are we doing? He didn't answer immediately. And she didn't fill the silence, which was one of the things about her that was relentless, the way she refused to rescue you from a question she'd meant to ask. I don't know exactly, he said finally. But I know I don't want to stop doing it. She was quiet for a moment. I have a son, she said. Not like he didn't know, like she was reminding them both that the sentence had weight. I know. He can't be a trial run for anything. He's not background. If something starts, it starts for him too, whether he knows it or not. And if it ends? I know, Adrian said, quieter. Emma's the same. Once someone's in her world, when they leave, she feels it. She doesn't say it, but she feels everything. Hannah looked at him. So we're both saying there are kids watching us figure this out? Yes. And you still came on a Saturday with pastries? I did. She looked at her hands for a moment. Then, the Green Door place on Fenwick sent me a loyalty card last week. I've been going 3 times a week. He looked at her. That's a long walk from here. It's 20 minutes. Hannah. I'm not saying it means anything, she said immediately. I think it means something. She pressed her lips together, looked straight ahead at the empty chairs. I think it might, she said very quietly, and I'm trying not to be scared of that. He didn't say anything. He just sat with her in it the way she had sat with him when he talked about losing his wife, just present, just honest, not trying to move it along toward something more comfortable. After a moment, Noah appeared in front of them holding a folded piece of paper. I made you something, he said to Adrian, the tone of someone bestowing something serious. Adrian unfolded it. It was a crayon drawing 2 figures, one tall and one short, standing beside what appeared to be a building with a lot of windows. Underneath, in large, careful 5-year-old letters, me and Adrian at the hotel. Adrian looked at it for a long moment. I've never been to a hotel, Noah said. But I thought maybe you probably go to them, for the travel writing. I do, Adrian said. His voice was slightly wrong. He cleared it. I'll put this up in my office. Noah looked at him steadily. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it to be polite. I mean it. Noah studied him for 3 full seconds. Then he nodded once and went back to his rocks. Hannah was watching Adrian's face. He could feel it. He folded the drawing carefully along the existing crease and put it in his coat pocket. He doesn't draw people he doesn't trust, she said quietly. Should I feel honored or terrified? Both, she said. Genuinely both. He looked at her. And then, because it was a Saturday, and he had come anyway, and the morning had turned into the kind of thing that only happens when you stop planning and just show up, he said, have dinner with me, this week, not a blind date, not because Lucas arranged anything, just dinner. She held his gaze. Just dinner, she said. Just dinner. With Emma and Noah. He thought about it. The first time, yes, if that's what makes it feel real. She smiled slowly. The real one, the unguarded one, the one that was slightly too wide and that she still sometimes tried to contain. You're learning. Trying to? Thursday, she said. I know a place with no candles. He laughed. I'll tell Noah. He already knows, she said. He picked the restaurant. Adrian stared at her. She stood up, smoothing her slacks. He's been planning this since the second Tuesday, she said, as if this were completely ordinary information. I've been waiting for you to catch up. She walked back to the desk. Adrian sat there for a moment in the quiet of the empty children's section, in the chair that was slightly too small for him, with a crayon drawing in his pocket of himself standing in front of a hotel. He thought about the lie he was still telling. He thought about Thursday. He told himself he would tell her soon. He believed it when he said it, which was the part he would think about later. He genuinely believed it. Just not quite yet. After Thursday. After things were more settled. After she knew him well enough to understand that the lie had been about fear, not malice. He was still telling himself that 3 weeks later when everything fell apart. The dinner had happened. 4 people at a table at a small Italian place on Birchwood that had no candles, and a children's menu that Noah had reviewed in advance and declared acceptable. Emma and Noah had conducted what could only be described as a mutual interview process across the first 20 minutes, during which they established shared opinions on 3 subjects: dogs, math homework, and the general unreliability of adults, and had then proceeded to speak to each other in the way children speak when they've found someone operating at the same frequency, fast, direct, without the social scaffolding that adults spend decades constructing. Hannah had watched them and then looked at Adrian and said barely above a murmur, "This is dangerous." "I know," he said. "They like each other." "I know. That makes this—" "I know." He held her gaze. "I know what it makes it." She looked back at the kids, exhaled. "Okay," she said, like she was agreeing to something she'd been arguing with for weeks and had finally stopped fighting. After that, the 4 of them fell into a rhythm that none of them had negotiated formally, but all of them observed instinctively. Tuesdays and Thursdays at the library. Saturday mornings occasionally with pastries. Sunday, once a walk in the park, where Noah and Emma had raced ahead on the path, and Adrian and Hannah had walked side by side without touching, just close enough that the possibility was always there, like a sentence that hadn't been finished yet. He had held her hand once, walking to her car on a Thursday evening, Noah ahead of them, already trying to climb the parking meter, and Hannah had stumbled slightly on an uneven curb, and he'd reached out and caught her arm, and she'd laughed at herself, and then his hand had moved from her arm to her hand, and she'd let it stay there. They'd walked the last 20 feet like that. Neither of them mentioned it. Neither of them let go until they reached her car. He thought about it on the drive home. He thought about it specifically in the way you turn something over in your hands in the dark, carefully aware of its weight. He had not held a woman's hand in 4 years. He had not known how much he had missed the specific simplicity of it. Not the romance of it, not the implication of it. Just contact. The physical fact of another person's hand in yours, warm and real, the most fundamental possible signal: I am here. You are here. We are both here at the same time. He almost told her that night. He pulled out his phone and typed, "I need to tell you something about my work." He read it back, deleted it, sat in his office at 11 p.m., looking at the city, and trying to find the right sentence, the one that would land correctly, the one that would explain, not justify, just explain why he hadn't said it sooner. He didn't find it. He put the phone down and told himself soon. The morning it happened, Adrian was in the middle of a board call. 37 floors up in the Carter Hospitality Tower. 17 people on a conference line, a legal team on standby, and on the screen at the end of the room, a slide that read, Carter Hospitality, Global Expansion, Q3 Milan, Dubai, Singapore. He was in the middle of a sentence about the Dubai property financing when his phone on the table lit up. Lucas. Text. He ignored it. It lit up again. Lucas again. Then a third time. This one different. A number he knew by memory, even though it still wasn't saved. He kept talking. He kept his voice level and his eyes on the room and his hands still on the table, because 36 years of self-control do not disappear in the face of a buzzing phone, and because there was a legal team on standby and 17 people on a line, and he was Adrian Carter, and he did not lose his composure in boardrooms. He finished his sentence. He called a 5-minute break. He picked up his phone. Lucas's first text. Call me. Lucas's second text. Seriously, call me right now. The third text from Hannah's number. I need to know if this is you. Below the text, she had sent a screenshot. It was a still image from a local news broadcast. The lower third chyron read, Billionaire CEO, Adrian Carter expands global hotel empire. Carter Hospitality announces Milan, Dubai, and Singapore properties. And in the center of the frame, coming out of the lobby of the Carter Hospitality Tower, with Marcus 2 steps behind, was Adrian. In the same coat he'd worn to the library on Thursday. He stared at the screenshot for 4 seconds. Then he stepped out of the boardroom, walked to the end of the hallway, and called her. She picked up on the second ring. Hannah. Is that you? Not a question. Her voice was completely level, which was worse than if it had been shaking. The level voice of someone who already knows the answer and is testing whether you'll tell the truth. Yes, he said. No hesitation, no softening. Yes, that's me. The silence that followed lasted long enough that he counted it without meaning to. 6 seconds. 7. Adrian Carter, she said. As in Carter Hospitality, as in the hotels. Yes. You're not a travel writer. No. You own the hotels. Yes. Another silence. Shorter this time. When she spoke again, her voice was still level, but something underneath it had shifted not to anger, not yet, but to something that was the specific precursor to anger in people who are very controlled and very hurt. How long have you known that I didn't know? He pressed his free hand flat against the hallway wall. Since the first night. The restaurant. Yes. And you didn't say anything because I didn't want it to change how you looked at me. He said it directly. He owed her that. Because every person I've met in the last 10 years has known before they've met me, and it changes everything. How they talk to me, what they want from me, how they decide to act around me. I needed someone to just see me. As a person, not as a number. She was quiet. Hannah, he said. Don't. The word came out sharp, not loud, but sharp, like something that had been held back and finally got through. Don't say my name right now like it helps. Okay. You lied to me. Still level, still controlled. But underneath it, and he could hear it now clearly, something was breaking. Not once, not at the beginning, for weeks. I asked you about your work. I asked you, multiple times. And you told me about hotels, about what you liked about hotels. And the whole time I know. My son drew you a picture, she said. He closed his eyes. He drew you a picture and called it Me and Adrian at the hotel, and I put it on the fridge. Adrian, I put it on my refrigerator. And this whole time you knew exactly what that building was, and I didn't. Her voice broke. Just for a second. She pulled it back immediately, the practiced recovery of someone who doesn't allow herself to fall apart where other people can hear it, but he'd heard it. One syllable cracked open. "Hannah, please let me—" "I have to go," she said. "I'm at work. Please don't hang up. I have to go." "Steadier now." Clipped. The voice of someone putting walls up in real time, brick by brick, and doing it quickly, because they know they have to do it before the feeling catches up to them. "I need to think. Please don't call me back today." "Okay," he said. His own voice was strange to him. Too quiet. "Okay." She hung up. He stood in the hallway for a moment. Through the boardroom door he could hear the low murmur of the conference line, resuming someone's voice reading numbers. He put the phone in his pocket. He walked back into the room. He sat down. He went through the remaining 47 minutes of the board meeting on autopilot, answering questions, redirecting legal signing off on the Dubai financing timeline. And he did it cleanly and correctly, because 36 years of self-control do not disappear. Not even now. Not even when every word he was saying felt like it was happening at great distance, like he was watching himself from somewhere at the end of a very long hallway. When the meeting ended and the room cleared, Lucas appeared in the doorway. Adrian looked at him. "I know," Lucas said quietly. "How bad is the coverage?" "The news clip is nothing. 3 seconds of B-roll. The problem is someone in the library neighborhood recognized you last week and posted on social. It's been circulating since this morning." He paused. "A few of the gossip outlets picked it up. Billionaire's secret romance with librarian, that kind of framing. Nothing confirmed, but photos." Adrian put both hands flat on the boardroom table. "Photos of what?" "The parking lot, Thursday, walking to her car." Lucas met his eyes. "The hand." Adrian said nothing. "I'm sorry," Lucas said. He meant it. Lucas almost always meant things, which was why Adrian had kept him as a best friend for 22 years, despite everything. "I didn't think the setup would—" "I know," Adrian said. "It's not yours." He picked up his phone, looked at the screen. Dark. No message from Hannah. He hadn't expected one. But some part of him had been checking anyway, the way you keep checking a door you know is locked. "What are you going to do?" Lucas asked. Adrian looked at the table. At the slide still on the screen at the end of the room, Milan, Dubai, Singapore. He thought about a gray piece of feldspar, smooth and flat, currently on the corner of his desk upstairs. He thought about a crayon drawing folded in his coat pocket. He thought about 20 feet of parking lot pavement on a Thursday evening, and a hand that had been warm and real, and there. "I'm going to give her the space she asked for," he said. "Today. And after today." He picked up his phone and put it in his pocket. He stood. "After today," he said, "I'm going to figure out how to tell someone the truth when sorry isn't going to be enough." Lucas watched him walk out. Down in the lobby of the Carter Hospitality Tower, Marcus held the door. The afternoon was moving outside. Taxis, pedestrians, the normal shape of a Thursday that had already split cleanly into before and after. Adrian stood at the curb for a moment before getting in the car. He thought about a Tuesday 3 weeks ago, when he'd sat in a chair too small for him in the children's section of a library and listened to a 5-year-old explain feldspar for 11 uninterrupted minutes and felt for the first time in 4 years like a person who was exactly where he was supposed to be. He thought about the lie, not the moment he told it, the moment he kept it, and the moment after that, and the one after that. The 37 individual mornings he had woken up and chosen quietly and without ceremony to leave the truth sitting in its corner while he went back to the library and sat in that chair and let himself have the thing he knew he didn't deserve. He got in the car. "Home, sir?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Adrian said. They pulled into traffic. He looked out the window at the city moving past the buildings, the people on the sidewalks, the ordinary machinery of a Thursday afternoon that didn't know and didn't care what had just broken, and he did not reach for his phone. He sat with it, because he had learned something somewhere between the first cup of coffee in the parking lot and a hand he had no right to miss, as much as he already did. Some things you have to feel the full weight of before you can figure out what to carry and what to put down. Across the city, in a small library on Carver Street, Hannah Brooks was sitting in the break room on her 15-minute afternoon break, both hands around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched, staring at a folded piece of paper she'd taken down from the refrigerator that morning before Noah woke up. The crayon drawing. Small gray building with a lot of windows. Me and Adrian at the hotel. She had been the one to find out. She had always been the one to find out, in her experience the one sitting in a break room, somewhere, holding the evidence, doing the math, arriving too late at the answer that had been there the whole time. She was not going to cry. She was at work, and she did not cry at work, and she especially was not going to cry over a man she had known for 5 weeks, and some days a man she had made a decision about, long before she'd admitted it to herself, a man who had listened to her son talk about rocks for 11 minutes like it was the most important conversation he had ever had. She pressed her palms flat on the break room table. Her phone was face down beside her coffee cup. She had not turned it over since she'd hung up. She turned it over. No new messages. She looked at it for a long moment, at his name at the top of the conversation thread, at the last thing she had said, "I have to go." She thought about the night in the parking lot, the 20 feet, the hand. She put the phone face down again. She folded the drawing carefully along the original crease, the way someone folds something they haven't decided whether to keep yet. She put it in her pocket. She went back to work. The first week, Adrian worked. Not in the way he usually worked, which was constant and structured and purposeful. The kind of work that had built a company worth several $billion across 2 decades of deliberate, relentless effort. This was different. This was the other kind. The kind that isn't about building anything. The kind that is just noise filling every available hour, so that the quiet couldn't find a foothold, because the quiet was where the thinking happened, and the thinking was where the feeling was. And the feeling was something Adrian Carter had become very skilled at postponing. He took 7 meetings on Monday that could have been emails. He flew to the Chicago property on Wednesday and walked the renovation floor for 3 hours with his facilities director asking questions about tile grout and HVAC specifications that his facilities director was visibly surprised to be asked. He approved the Milan architectural plans at 11 p.m. on Thursday night, and sent his legal team a 12-point memo at 6 a.m. Friday that his general counsel later described privately and carefully as thorough. He answered every email within the hour. He returned every call. He did not go to the library. Emma noticed on day 4. She noticed the way children notice things, not by asking directly, not right away, but by watching, by being quieter than usual at breakfast, by appearing in the doorway of his office after dinner on the 4th night and standing there until he looked up. "What's wrong?" she said. "Nothing's wrong. I'm working." "You're always working. This is different." He set his pen down. Did something happen with Hannah?" He looked at his daughter, 6 years old, standing in a doorway in her pajamas with her rabbit under her arm and her mother's gray-green eyes seeing straight through the performance of a grown man who had decades on her. "It's complicated," he said. "Is she okay?" "She's fine." "Are you okay?" He opened his mouth. Then he closed it. Because Emma had asked him once before if he was okay. "Are you lonely, Daddy?" And he had laughed and deflected and called himself tired, and she had looked at him with those eyes and said something he still hadn't found an answer to. "I made a mistake," he said. Simply, honestly. The way you talk to someone who will know if you're lying. Emma processed this. "Did you say sorry?" "She doesn't want to hear from me right now." "But you're going to say sorry." "Yes." "Good." She shifted her rabbit from one arm to the other. "Because she's nice. And Noah's nice. And you were nicer when you were going there." He looked at his daughter for a long moment. "Yeah," he said. "I know." Emma nodded once like something had been confirmed to her satisfaction. Then she said, "Mrs. Hartley gave me a sad book today." "The librarian at school?" "She said it was the good kind of sad. But I don't think she knows what that means as well as Hannah does." He said nothing. "Can I have 15 more minutes before bed?" "Yes." She disappeared back down the hallway. He heard her settle onto the couch, the particular sound of a small person arranging themselves among cushions, and then the quiet that meant she was reading. He sat at his desk for a while without picking up the pen. He had not called Hannah again. She had asked him not to, and he had respected that, and he had told himself it was the right thing to do, that she needed space, that pressing her would only confirm the worst version of what she was probably thinking. But by the end of the first week, the discipline of the silence had started to feel less like respect and more like cowardice, and the distinction mattered to him even when he wished it didn't. He had written to her once, not called, typed a text and stared at it for 20 minutes, and then sent it before he could reconsider. "I know you need space, and I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that everything I told you about Emma, about my wife, about what this has meant to me, was true. All of it. The only lie was the size of what I do for work. The rest was real. I'm sorry. Take all the time you need." She had not replied. He had not expected her to, but some part of him had been checking the screen hourly for 4 days, the way you press on a bruise, not to heal it, just to confirm it's still there. It was. Lucas appeared in his office on day 8, unannounced, carrying 2 cups of coffee and the expression of a man who has decided something and is braced to be argued with. "You look terrible," Lucas said. "Thank you for coming." "You need to eat something that isn't from your desk." He set a cup down. "And before you say you're fine, I'm going to save us both time and tell you that you're not fine, and that I watched you review a hotel's bathroom fixture order for 45 minutes yesterday from the security camera in the operations room, so let's skip the part where we pretend." That was a legitimate review. "Adrian, the fixtures had already been installed." Adrian looked at his coffee. "Have you heard from her?" Lucas asked, sitting down. "No." "Have you tried again?" "I texted, once." "That's not—" "She asked me not to call," Adrian said. His voice came out sharper than he intended. He modulated it. "She was clear about what she needed, and I'm going to respect that. There's a difference between respecting her space and disappearing." "Lucas, I know what you're just." He picked up the coffee. "I'm aware. I'm thinking about it. I don't have a next move that isn't going to make things worse right now, and until I do, I'm going to stay in my lane and let her breathe." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "How are you?" he asked, not the social version of the question, the real one. Adrian looked at the window, at the city, at the particular blue of a mid-morning sky that had no opinion about any of this. "I'm fine," he said. Lucas said nothing. "I'm not fine," Adrian said. "I know. It's not—" He stopped, turned the coffee cup in his hands. "It's not just about Hannah, although it's about Hannah. It's about I had something. For those weeks I had something I haven't had in 4 years, and I threw it away because I couldn't figure out how to be honest about one thing. One thing. And I knew. I knew every day that I was making the choice, and I kept making it, because it was easier than the alternative, and now I'm sitting here doing bathroom fixture reviews, so—" "You could go to the library," Lucas said, carefully. "She doesn't want to see me." "You don't know that." "Lucas." He looked at him directly. "She put down the phone, and she hasn't picked it back up in 8 days. I know that." Lucas sat with it for a moment. Then, "Noah asked about you." Adrian went still. "Hannah's mother mentioned it to my wife at the market." Lucas continued in the measured tone of someone delivering information he knows will land hard. "Apparently, he's been asking every day. Where did Mr. Adrian go? When is Mr. Adrian coming back?" He paused. "He stopped eating his lunch at school for 2 days," the grandmother said, then started again. "But—" Adrian set the coffee cup down, very carefully. "You didn't tell me that to make me feel better," he said. No, I told you because you needed to know the size of this. I'm aware of the size of this. I don't think you are, Lucas said not unkindly. I think you're sitting here protecting her from yourself, when what she might actually need is for you to show up and be accountable. In person, not a text. She said, don't call her that day. That day, Adrian. That was 8 days ago. He leaned forward. You told me your plan was to figure out how to tell someone the truth when sorry isn't enough. Have you figured that out yet? Adrian said nothing. Because it seems to me like maybe the thing you figure that out by doing, Lucas said, is by showing up. He stood up, left the second coffee on the desk. Emma has a performance Thursday, he said at the door. I know you've got it in your calendar. After that, I think you should go. He left. Adrian sat alone with both coffee cups and the city and the silence. He picked up his phone, looked at the unanswered text, put the phone down, picked up the small piece of gray feldspar from the corner of his desk and held it in his palm, smooth, flat, unremarkable. He closed his hand around it and went back to work. Across the city, Hannah was also not sleeping. She had a system. She had always had a system since Noah was born, since she first had to figure out how to be the only person in a household responsible for all of it, and the system usually worked. The system was, make the decision, feel the feeling on a schedule, move on. Efficient, functional, proven. The system was not working. She had done the right thing. She was clear about that. The anger was legitimate and clean and well-earned, and she had every right to take the space she'd taken and to be the person who protected herself first, because she had not always done that, and she had learned the cost of it, and she was not going to unlearn that lesson for a man she'd known for 5 weeks just because. Just because he had listened to her son talk about rocks for 11 uninterrupted minutes. Just because he had held her hand in a parking lot without making it into something it needed to be named. Just because he had walked into the library on a Thursday, 2 weeks in, and asked her not what she did, but what she liked about it, and had listened to the answer the way people listen when they're actually interested, when the question wasn't a social mechanism, but a real one. She stacked papers, she graded, she shelved books in the order they belonged. She had dinner with her mother on Tuesday and deflected every question with the practiced efficiency of someone who learned young that her mother's concern and her mother's interference were packaged together and you got both or neither. Noah at dinner on Wednesday ate most of his food and then looked at his plate for a while and said, "Is Mr. Adrian not our friend anymore?" Hannah set her fork down. "It's complicated, bug." Complicated means no. Complicated means I'm still figuring it out. Noah pushed a piece of carrot around his plate. He listened to the whole rock thing, he said. Most people stop listening after the quartz part. She had nothing to say to that. Emma texted me, Noah added. Hannah looked up sharply. She what? She said her dad is really sad. She said he looks like he did after her mom died, but quieter. He delivered this information with the straight factual calm of a child who has not yet learned that some data points are supposed to be withheld. She said she thought maybe you were mad at him. Noah, you and Emma shouldn't be. We're not doing anything. She just texted. He looked up. I didn't say anything bad. I just said I didn't know what happened, and I hoped they could fix it. Hannah pressed her lips together, looked at the ceiling for a moment. We're handling it, she said. Adults always say that when they're not handling it. Noah, I'm just saying. He picked up his fork again. I still have his feldspar rock. He said I could keep it, but I feel like maybe he wants it back. She looked at her son across the dinner table, 5 years old, dark-haired and serious, and watching her with eyes that had learned very early to read the room because when you grow up with one parent you learn quickly to watch for weather. I'll think about it, she said. He nodded, and went back to eating because he was 5, and he had said what he needed to say, and the rest was above his pay grade. That was the Wednesday before the Maplewood Community Storytelling Festival. The festival was an annual thing. Hannah had organized parts of it for 3 years. The library had a table, the children's section put up a display, and there was a little stage in the community center 2 blocks over, where kids and adults could sign up to read a story or a poem, or in the case of one memorable year, perform an original interpretive piece about recycling. It was low-key and warm, and exactly the kind of community event that the neighborhood did well, not polished, not performative, just real. Noah had signed up to read a story. He had been practicing all week a picture book about a dog who gets lost and finds his way home using his nose, and he had informed Hannah on Thursday morning that he was not nervous because he had already read it to his rock collection, and they had been very receptive. She had driven him to the community center at 6:30 on Saturday evening. Her mother was coming to watch. 3 of Hannah's librarian colleagues were there with their families. The community center smelled like folding chairs and someone's good idea about a cookie table, which turned out to be an excellent idea, and Noah had eaten 2 before Hannah could intervene. The stage was small, elevated about a foot with a single microphone on a stand, and a spotlight that was really just the overhead fixture with the others dimmed. About 60 people in folding chairs, families and neighbors, and a couple of older folks from the senior center who came every year. Noah was third on the program. He climbed the stage steps carefully. He was wearing the sweater ironed again, disturbed again, and he was carrying his book, and he looked for just a moment very small up there against the microphone. Hannah held her breath. He adjusted the microphone down. He had practiced this, apparently, because he did it without assistance and with complete composure. He opened his book. Then he closed it. Hannah frowned. He set the book down on the little podium beside the microphone stand. He looked out at the audience with the particular focused calm of a child who has made a decision and is not second-guessing it. "I was going to read this book," he said. His voice came through the microphone clearly and without wobble. "But I want to talk about something instead. Is that okay?" Someone in the audience said warmly. "Go ahead, honey." Noah nodded. "I want to talk about someone I know," he said. "His name is Mr. Adrian. He's my friend." He paused, organized his thoughts the way he organized his rocks carefully with a clear system. "He reads bedtime stories. Not to me, but to his daughter Emma, and she said he does all the voices, which is the most important part." A few people in the audience smiled. Hannah did not move. "He listens to things," Noah continued. "Like he actually listens. When I told him about my rocks, he didn't look at his phone. He asked questions, real questions, not the ones adults ask when they're being polite." He looked down for a second. "I can tell when adults are being polite. Most of them are polite a lot." A small, gentle laugh moved through the room. "My mom pretends she isn't sad," Noah said. "She's really good at it, but I know. I can tell because she keeps the folded drawing in her sweater pocket, and she doesn't put it back on the fridge, but she doesn't throw it away either." His voice was even and clear. "I drew Mr. Adrian a picture of the hotel because I thought maybe someday we could all go, me and Emma and him and my mom. And I think maybe my mom thought about that too because she still has the drawing." The room had gone very quiet. Hannah's mother, sitting beside her, reached over and put her hand on Hannah's arm. Hannah didn't move. "I think they had a fight," Noah said. "I don't know exactly. Adults don't always explain things." He looked out at the audience. He looked in that moment simultaneously exactly like a 5-year-old and about 40 years older. "But Mr. Adrian was nice to my mom, and he was nice to me. And I think my mom is sad because he's gone even when she says it's complicated." He glanced very briefly just for a second in Hannah's direction, then back to the audience. "So, I wanted to say that out loud, because maybe someone needed to." He picked up his book. "Now I'll read the story," he said. "It's about a dog. It's good." And he opened to page 1 and began reading in the same clear, steady voice, as if none of the preceding 2 minutes had happened. The audience was absolutely still for a moment. Then, quietly, warmly, someone began to clap, and it spread gently through the room, and someone near the back wiped their eyes, and someone else laughed a little at themselves for crying at a 5-year-old's speech at a community center in a folding chair on a Saturday evening, because it had been that kind of 2 minutes. Hannah sat through the entire dog story without blinking. Her mother squeezed her arm once, and did not say anything, which was the most her mother had ever given her, and she appreciated it more than she could say. Afterward, while Noah was at the cookie table, conducting what appeared to be a very thorough evaluation of the snickerdoodles, Hannah stood at the back of the community center, with her arms wrapped around herself. She had not cried. She was at a public event, and she did not cry at public events, and she was the kind of person who maintained her composure in situations that required it, and this required it. But her throat was tight, and the folded drawing was in her pocket, and it had been there every day for 8 days, like a question she couldn't answer. She didn't know who recorded it. She found out later it was one of the older women from the senior center, a retired teacher named Gloria, who ran the neighborhood Facebook group and had a smartphone she wielded with cheerful imprecision and genuine community spirit. Gloria had recorded the whole thing on her phone because she recorded everything on her phone, and she posted it with the caption, "This little one at the storytelling festival tonight." Sometimes children say the things we can't. By Sunday morning, it had 4,000 views. By Sunday afternoon, it had 40,000. By Sunday evening, it had moved. Adrian saw it at 8:47 p.m. on Sunday. He was in his living room. Emma was in bed. The good book, The One Light on the Satisfied Arrangement. He was on the couch with his phone in his hand, doing the thing he did every evening now, which was not quite reading the news, and not quite watching anything, and not quite thinking, just existing in the low-grade restlessness that had been his home state for 9 days. Lucas had sent the link. No text, just the link. Adrian tapped it. The community center. 60 people in folding chairs. A small stage with a microphone. And Noah in the sweater that was always slightly disturbed by the time they arrived anywhere, adjusting the microphone down with both hands. Adrian watched without moving. When Noah said, "His name is Mr. Adrian, he's my friend." Something shifted in Adrian's chest, small but seismic, the way the first crack runs through something before it gives. When Noah said he listens to things, he actually listens. Adrian's hand tightened around the phone. When Noah said, "My mom pretends she isn't sad, but I know I can tell because she keeps the folded drawing in her sweater pocket." Adrian pressed his free hand over his mouth. He watched the rest of it. He watched Noah pick up the book and say, "Now I'll read the story. It's about a dog." It's good with the composure of a small person who had just laid down the full weight of something and was simply ready to move on to the next item on his list. He watched it again. He sat with both feet on the floor and his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands for a moment that lasted somewhere between 30 seconds and the rest of his life. Then he straightened. He was not afraid of the Singapore deal. He was not afraid of the Milan acquisition, or the Dubai financing, or the legal team, or the board, or the 17 people on the conference line. He had been afraid of this, specifically this, the size of it, the realness of it. The thing that could not be managed or strategized or controlled from a corner booth with a clear sightline to both exits. He had spent 4 years building walls, because the last time he hadn't had them, the cost had been unsurvivable. And he had told himself the walls were for Emma, for the company, for efficiency, for every reason except the real one, which was that he had been afraid. Noah Brooks, age 5, with a piece of feldspar and a rock collection, and a drawing on the fridge, or off the fridge now, but still in a pocket, had just said in a community center in front of 60 people what Adrian had been unable to say to himself in 9 days of silence and 7 meetings that should have been emails. He picked up his phone. He opened the text thread. He looked at his unanswered message from 8 days ago. He typed, "I saw the video. I'm not going to say anything tonight because it's late, and you don't need that from me right now, but I'm coming to the library tomorrow. Not to fix anything. not to make a case for myself. Just because I need to be honest with you in person the way I should have been from the beginning. If you don't want to see me, you can tell me to go and I will. No argument, no pressure. But I'm coming. He read it back. He sent it. He put the phone down on the couch cushion beside him. He looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he got up, walked down the hallway, and stood in Emma's doorway. She was asleep, book on her pillow, one arm around the rabbit, the specific piece of a child in the middle of a good story. He watched her breathe for a moment. "Are you lonely, Daddy?" Yes. He had been. It just means you still have room for somebody. He turned off her light, left the door open the way she liked. He went back down the hallway. His phone was lit up on the couch cushion. He sat back down, picked it up. One text, from Hannah's number. He looked at it for a long moment before he opened it. 3 words. "I know." "Okay." He read them twice. 3 times. Not forgiveness. He knew that. Not an ending, not a beginning. Just a door left open an inch, which was more than he had any right to, and more than he'd had all week, and which meant something exactly as large as it was, and not one bit larger. He set the phone down. He sat in the quiet of his living room for a long time without reaching for the next thing. And across the city, in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building on Carver Street, Hannah put her phone face down on the nightstand and lay in the dark and listened to Noah breathing through the baby monitor she still kept, even though he was 5 and she probably didn't need it anymore. The drawing was on the nightstand. She'd taken it out of her pocket an hour ago, unfolded it, looked at it, not put it back on the fridge, not yet, but set it somewhere she could see it. Me and Adrian at the hotel. She looked at the ceiling. She was still angry. She wanted to be clear about that even here, even alone in the dark, where there was no one to perform clarity for. The anger was real, and it was not finished, and it was not going to be finished by a text message or by one Monday morning, and he needed to understand that. But she had kept the drawing. She had kept it for 8 days in a pocket close to her chest, and that meant something too, whether she was ready to say it out loud or not. She turned onto her side. Through the wall, Noah made a small sound in his sleep, the contented, unconscious sound of someone deeply at rest, as if he had put down something heavy tonight and was sleeping lighter for it. She closed her eyes. "Okay," she had written. Not yes. Not come back. Not I forgive you. Just, I know. Okay. The smallest possible opening. She was going to see tomorrow, whether he knew what to do with it. He was there when the library opened. Not inside. Not pressing his face to the glass or pacing the front steps, or doing anything that could be reasonably described as dramatic. He was simply standing on the sidewalk across the street at 8:55 a.m. on a Monday, in a coat that was not the one from the news footage, holding a small white bag from the Green Door place on Fenwick. Marcus was parked half a block away. Adrian had told him to stay in the car, and had meant it. This was not something he needed security for. This was something he needed to do alone, in whatever way it was going to go, without the infrastructure of Adrian Carter, the CEO, surrounding him like scaffolding. He watched the library lights come on inside. At 9 o'clock exactly he crossed the street. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open. Hannah was behind the circulation desk, setting up for the day computer on returns cart, positioned the particular organized efficiency of someone who has opened this room 300 times and knows exactly how it should begin. She was wearing the dark blue cardigan, the one she wore on Tuesdays. He had not known until this moment that he had memorized which cardigan she wore on which day, and the realization landed quietly and with great certainty. She looked up when the door opened. She looked at him for a moment, then at the bag. "Fenwick," she said. "Fenwick," he said. She held his gaze steadily. Her face was not closed, but it was not open either. It was the careful neutrality of someone who has decided to let what happens next determine what comes after. "The reading room is empty," she said. "We have 40 minutes before the first program." He nodded. Came inside. Let the door close behind him. She came around the desk and walked ahead of him to the small reading room at the back. 4 chairs, a round table, a window that let in the morning light. She sat. He sat across from her. He set the bag on the table between them, and did not push it toward her, and did not use it as an opening. He put his hands flat on the table. "I'm not here to make a case," he said. "I told you that last night, and I meant it. I just need to say some things in person, and then whatever you decide, I'll respect it." She was watching him. Quiet. Waiting. "The first night," he said. "At Rosario's. When you walked in with Noah, I knew within 10 minutes that you didn't know who I was. And instead of saying, 'Actually, let me tell you what I do,' I let it go. Because you looked at me like I was just a person, not a number, not an opportunity, just a man at a table." He paused. "I haven't had that in a long time. I didn't want to give it up." "That's not a reason," Hannah said, not harshly, just clearly. "That's an explanation. There's a difference." "I know. You're right." He didn't look away from her. The actual reason, is that I was afraid. I have been afraid since my wife died of anything that mattered enough to break me if it went wrong. I have built the most efficient possible version of my life around that fear. Emma, work, control. Those 3 things in that order. And nothing else that could get past the walls. He let that sit for a second. "Then you handed me a book without looking up from your sorting, and I came back on Thursday, and then Thursday after that, and I kept telling myself I'd correct the lie soon. Tomorrow. Next week. After things were more settled." He exhaled. "There was never going to be a right time, because the right time was the first night, and I didn't take it." Hannah looked at him for a long moment. "Why did you tell me you were a travel writer specifically?" "Because I write about hotels for the company. Internal reviews. It was the closest I could get to something that wasn't a complete fabrication, which I understand doesn't make it better." "It doesn't," she agreed. "No." The morning light came through the window. Somewhere in the main room, the radiator ticked on. "Do you know what I keep coming back to?" Hannah said. Her voice was level, but it wasn't flat. It had the texture of something that had been thought about many times, from many angles. "It's not the billionaire part. I don't care about the money. I genuinely do not care about that." She looked at her hands briefly. "What I keep coming back to is that I told you things, real things, about Noah's father, about my mother, about I told you I'd been deciding every day that my life was enough. That was a real thing I said to a person I trusted. And that person was making a calculation every single time we talked about whether today was the day he'd tell me the truth." She met his eyes. "That's what hurt, not the hotels." "I know," he said, quietly. "You deserved better than that, from the first day." She looked at him steadily. "I'm not easy," she said. "I need you to understand that before anything else. I'm not the woman who gets swept off her feet and forgives everything because it's romantic. I have a son who has already had one person leave, and I will not—" She stopped, steadied herself. "I will not let that happen to him again because I made a decision with my heart before my head caught up." "I know. I need honesty. Not comfortable honesty. Not honesty when it's convenient. Full honesty, even when it costs you something." "I know." "You keep saying, 'I know,'" she said. Not quite accusatory. Almost. "Because I do know. I've known for 9 days what I should have known from the beginning." He moved his hand slightly on the table, not toward her. Just a shift, the unconscious movement of someone trying to find where to put the weight of what they're carrying. "I'm not here asking for forgiveness. I don't think I've earned that yet. I'm here because I promised myself that whatever I said to you today would be completely true, with nothing held back and nothing managed. And the completely true thing is this." He held her gaze. "I have not been a whole person for 4 years. I have been a very functional, very capable partial person who was good at his job and good with his daughter and very good at keeping the walls in good repair." His voice was steady, but underneath it, she could hear the thing that made it cost something to say. "And then you handed me a book and told me why you liked your job, and your son fell asleep on your shoulder, and you laughed too loud, and you walked to your car, and somewhere between the restaurant and this room, I became a whole person again without noticing when it happened." He stopped. "That is not a line. I am not good at lines. Ask Lucas. I am genuinely terrible at them. That is just what is true." Hannah was very still. "I'm not asking you to forget what I did," he continued. "I'm not asking you to pretend the last 9 days didn't happen. I'm asking if you have any belief at all that I am telling you the truth right now in this room for the chance to be honest with you from here forward, for however long you'll let me try. One day at a time. Whatever that looks like. Just let me try." The room was quiet. She looked at him for a long time. He let her. He did not fill the silence, did not reach for her, did not do anything except sit across from her and let the truth he'd just said stay in the air between them where it belonged. Then Hannah reached across the table and pulled the white bag toward her. She opened it, looked inside. "You got the almond ones," she said. "They're your favorite." "How do you know they're my favorite?" "You close your eyes for 1 second when you take the first bite. You don't do that with the others." She looked at him. Her expression was doing the thing it did when something had gotten past the defenses before she'd finished deciding whether to let it in. The still recalibrating look. The door an inch open, checking what kind of knock this was. "Adrian," she said. "Yeah. I'm still angry. I know. It's not going to just stop being there because you said the right things. I know. I'm not asking it to." She looked at him for one more long moment. Then she said quietly, "I kept the drawing. I know. Noah told me. Technically, he told 60 people and then the internet." Something shifted in her face. Just for a second, the ghost of the surprised laugh. The one that was slightly too wide. The one she sometimes tried to contain. She pressed her lips together to keep it in check, and it didn't entirely work. "He had no business saying that," she said. "He was right, though." She looked down at the bag. Back at him. "He's been asking about you every day." "I know. Lucas told me." Emma texted him, "You should probably have a conversation with your daughter about appropriate use of a 6-year-old's iPad." "She doesn't have—" He stopped. "She absolutely has an iPad. I'm going to have to revisit my understanding of what we use it for." Hannah's mouth curved. Small, careful, but real. The particular silence of two people who have said the hard things and are now sitting in the new shape of the room they've made. "I'm not saying yes to everything," Hannah said. "I'm saying I'm willing to find out what honest looks like. From the beginning. Properly. That's all I'm asking." "No grand gestures," she said. "I don't need grand gestures. I need—" "Tuesday and Thursday," he said. "Coffee from Fenwick. A book I probably need to read. Honest answers to honest questions." She looked at him. "That's it," she said. "That's everything," he said. She held his gaze. Then she reached into the white bag and took out one of the almond pastries. She took the first bite, and for just 1 second, she closed her eyes. When she opened them, he was watching her with an expression that was very quiet and very certain. She pointed at him. "Don't." "I didn't say anything. You were about to be very pleased with yourself. I was being very dignified. You were absolutely not." He smiled, the real one, the one that wasn't managed, the one she had first seen in the parking lot when he watched Noah walk ahead of them, and now recognized the same way she recognized his Tuesday coat and his manner of asking questions that were not placeholders. She recognized it as the face of a man who was not performing anything. She took another bite of the pastry. Outside the reading room, the library was beginning its day. She could hear the front door, the arrival of the morning volunteer, the particular sound of a space that was about to be full of people coming in to find something they were looking for. "I have a program at 9:40, she said. "I know. I'll get out of your way." He stood. She stood. They walked back through the main room together, not quite side by side, not quite apart. He stopped at the circulation desk while she went around behind it, and for a moment they were just standing there, the desk between them, the morning around them, the city outside doing its ordinary things. "Thank you for coming today," she said. "Thank you for the 40 minutes. She nodded. Then, "Adrian." He had been turning toward the door. He stopped. "Thursday," she said. "Come Thursday. Bring the coffee." He looked at her. "Okay," he said. "Thursday." She picked up a stack of returned books and set them on the sorting cart with the practiced ease of someone who was absolutely not watching him walk to the door. She was watching him walk to the door. He pushed through it out into the Monday morning, and she heard it close behind him, and she stood for a moment with her hands on the returns cart and breathed in the specific quiet of a room that is between one thing and the next. Then her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at it. A text from her mother. "I saw the video of Noah. Call me." She smiled, shook her head, put the phone face down. The morning volunteer arrived and started on the periodicals. Hannah went back to work. 2 weeks passed, then 3, and 4. And the Tuesdays and Thursdays resumed, but differently now, in the way that things are different when they are being built consciously rather than accidentally. There were no more omissions. When Hannah asked him a question, he answered it fully, including the parts that were complicated or unflattering, because he had made a decision about what honesty cost, and had decided to pay it every time. She introduced him properly to her mother, which was its own occasion. A Sunday lunch at a diner on Birchwood, where her mother asked Adrian 7 questions that were each technically about something ordinary, and were each actually about something completely different, and Adrian answered every single one of them directly, including the one about what he was looking for, which he answered with the simple, unhedged truth. This. Exactly this. "I'm not looking anymore." Her mother had looked at Hannah across the table with an expression that Hannah had only seen twice before in her life, an expression that meant well. Okay then. Emma and Noah, for their part, required no adjustment period. They had apparently been conducting their own parallel negotiation by text for 3 weeks, a fact that Adrian and Hannah discovered simultaneously, and which prompted a conversation about parental oversight that dissolved into laughter before it reached any conclusions. On a Thursday evening in the 5th week, Adrian and Hannah were walking to her car after closing. Noah and Emma were ahead of them on the path. Emma explaining something about her new book with the rapid-fire enthusiasm she hit when she had opinions. Noah listening with his particular focused attention, his small hand occasionally gesturing toward something. Adrian and Hannah walked side by side, not performing distance, not performing closeness, just walking the night, cool the streetlights doing their soft work on the pavement. He reached over and took her hand. She did not startle, did not calculate, did not make it into something that needed to be named. She just let her hand stay in his. They walked the rest of the path like that past the parking meter Noah was inspecting, with one hand past the bench where someone had left a paperback open face down, through the particular quiet of an evening that had decided not to ask anything of anyone. At the car, Noah and Emma conducted a brief and ceremonial farewell that involved a handshake, a complicated sequence that appeared to be a coded goodbye they had invented, and a debate about whose house had better snacks that was left unresolved as a professional courtesy. Emma climbed into the back of Marcus's waiting car and immediately opened her book. Noah turned to Adrian. He was holding something. He opened his hand. The piece of gray feldspar, smooth flat, the best one. "I was keeping it safe," Noah said, "but I think you should have it back." Adrian looked at the small stone in Noah's palm. He looked at Noah. He crouched down to his level. "You sure?" he said. Noah considered it, then nodded once. The formal conclusive nod. The agreement reached nod. Adrian took the stone. "Thank you," he said. "I'll take good care of it." I know, Noah said. That's why I'm giving it back. He turned and climbed into the car, businesslike, buckled himself in with total self-sufficiency, and picked up the book from the seat beside him. Done. Adrian stood back up. Hannah was watching him with an expression that was full of something she didn't try to name or manage or contain. Just full of it. The way a room is full of light when someone finally opens the window. He's been waiting to do that for 2 weeks, she said. I know. Adrian closed his hand around the stone. I could tell. She looked at him. The streetlight caught her eyes in a way that reminded him of the first night, the door opening the life he had been carrying by himself, suddenly feeling like it had shifted its weight. I have to get him to bed, she said. I know. She didn't move yet. Neither did he. Adrian, she said, quietly. Yeah. Thank you for coming back. He held her gaze. There was nowhere else to go, he said simply, and meant it with everything he had. She stood up on her toes and kissed him quick, real warm, and then stepped back and looked at him once more with those clear, unguarded eyes and got in the car. He watched the taillights until the street was empty. Then he opened his hand and looked at the piece of gray feldspar, smooth flat, unremarkable to any eye except the ones that had decided it mattered. He put it in his pocket. He walked back to Marcus's car. Emma looked up from her book when he got in. How did it go? She asked. He looked at his daughter. The gray-green eyes, the old soul and the 6-year-old face, and the absolute unsparing love that had kept him standing upright through 4 years of a life that had sometimes felt like it was being built one difficult morning at a time. Good, he said. Really good. Emma studied him the way she always studied him, thoroughly, without pretense, reading the room the way only she could. Then she smiled, small and satisfied, the smile of someone who had known how this would go before he did. Good, she said, and went back to her book. Adrian leaned his head back against the seat. Outside, the city moved past the window. The buildings and the lights and the ordinary beautiful machinery of a Thursday evening that didn't know and didn't need to know. That somewhere in the middle of it, a man who had been a partial person for 4 years had finally found his way back to something whole. He thought about a restaurant door opening on a night he'd been ready to leave. A woman in a dark coat, a small boy with a bear, a laugh that ambushed you. A library on Carver Street. A feldspar rock, a drawing on a fridge, a microphone and a 5-year-old's voice carrying the weight of the things the adults couldn't say. He thought about 20 feet of parking lot pavement and a hand warm and real. He thought about a door that had been open an inch and what it meant to walk through it honestly, with nothing managed and nothing held back, and find on the other side, not the disaster he'd feared, but something simple and true, and entirely worth the cost of being afraid. Adrian Carter, 36 years old, billionaire, CEO, single father, man who had arrived at the restaurant ready to leave, pressed his hand against the window and watched his city go by. And for the first time in a very long time, he was not lonely. He was not lonely, and he was not afraid, and he was not reaching for the next thing or the next wall or the next version of himself that needed less. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. And this time, he knew it.